Hundred strong. What's that word, family? Hey, man, check this out. It's your homeboy Loafing to Go, and I'm back with another episode of Fast and Furious Interviews. On today's show, ladies and gentlemen, we got a very special guest in the building. So, won't you get up here and tell the people who you are and where you from?
What's good? I'm Wade Simmons. I'm a funeral service worker, independent filmmaker, and I also train for pro wrestling. Born and raised in Chicago. Always wanted to be a funeral director, so started working in the funeral home in high school. Volunteered, then when it got a chance to go to school for it, and had a little rough journey, but it was worth it. And then once I started going to school to be a mortician, after I finished that, turned around and went back to school for filmmaking. And then once I graduated for that, I ended up training for pro wrestling. So my story is pretty much all centered around live with purpose, especially being from Chicago and seeing a lot of young people lose their life senselessly. Like seeing that all the time, it like makes you really want to live with purpose and really help the community. Cause like a lot of times in our community, we don't always have a lot of resources like some of the other communities. So a lot of the violence and stuff kind of stems from that. So, just kind of seeing that just motivated me to live with purpose and to do something in the community where I can help my brothers and sisters know that it's a better path. So that's who I am, Wade Simmons.
All right, so a funeral director, a young black funeral director, man, what got you into that besides the money? Because I know it got to be a lot of money to be made in Chicago doing funerals, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, funeral directors do make good money. But for me, actually, when I was a little child, like this was some years ago, we was in Kansas City and I actually drowned. And I had like a near-death experience where I don't remember if I left my body or what, but like I remember seeing angels as a child in the water. And so like from that point on, I'm like, okay, like I know God is real and like I know it's a life after this. So I'm like, I feel like that experience kind of like motivated me like to like not fear death. So as a child, like when I would go to funerals and stuff, I'm like, I think there's something I want to do. So I pursued it, and I've been happy doing it. I mean, of course, you don't want to see nobody go, but I feel like for somebody, for myself getting into it, I feel like I'm somebody that would be good for the job. So I hung around it for 13 years, and now finally licensed. So man, it's been a journey. You see a lot of like being in that type of field. It teaches you to realize like we all even, like no matter how much money you have or don't have, like I feel like that job will humble you because like you see a lot and then like you realize like life ain't just all about like just trying to be better than nobody. It's just about living with purpose and helping people. That's what I stem from it.
So you've been doing this since around the beginning of the drill scene. Did you notice a large amount of young black people being killed starting around 2012 or when you first began doing this?
Yeah, because I started in 2010, and it was crazy because at one point, like we were doing more younger people than older people. Like, I mean, it was crazy talking about like 13-year-olds, 9-year-old. I mean, like 20-year-olds, and a lot of it, and most of it was from gun violence, car accidents, and gun violence.
So you said 9-year-olds, man. How many children do you think you helped with the funeral? Did you touch the bodies or did you have to cut them open or anything?
Well, so while I was at the particular funeral home I was working at the time, I didn't really assist with any embalming and nothing like that. I just did strictly services. But when I was in school, we did have to embalm, like people who like families, I guess, didn't come in and claim them, or they, just wanted to donate their bodies. But I mean, but as far as from working in a funeral home, man, I've seen lots of babies. I mean, like kids getting killed. Like it's crazy. Like I remember a couple of years ago, we did a service for a girl. She got killed and her dad got killed in the same house. It was crazy. Like man, you see a lot doing that type of work.
The first time you ever seen a child being took by gun violence, what was that like?
Man, it was rough because like you think about it, like man, nobody want to come into the world like to just be taken out like that senselessly. I feel like of course sometimes there are natural things that happen, but something that could have been prevented, I think is like unfair if you ask me. And I think like when you see things like that, like man, that's like I don't know. It almost made me kind of want to be like Batman in a way, you know.
Can you tell us what happened to that first child that you had to help
Well,
with
I'm
the
gonna tell you the
service?
truth. We bury so many young people, man. It's hard to remember all of them. But I can tell you one particularly that I remember. It wasn't necessarily gun violence though. This was a young child that got killed by the mom's boyfriend. And I remember at the service, like the dad family came and the mom family came, and I remember like it was a really big altercation where like the police had to get involved, and it was like, I mean, like a whole lot of cops had to come in and just intervene, because like I know like the father was really hurt that that the son got murdered like that. So man, but like I said, we bury so many young people, it's hard to remember all of them. Real talk.
Right. And you said that you came into this business in high school. How does that happen in high school? Because I don't remember, I'm from Chicago too. I don't remember like the mortuary service in the high school.
Okay, well, so you probably know the funeral home I used to work for. So I used to work. I worked 13 years for Leak and Sons Funeral Home, which everybody in Chicago pretty much knows Leak and Sons. But yeah, I started in high school. My teacher, Miss Anderson, she had called Spencer Lee Jr. like, "Hey, I got a young man that wants to be a mortician." He answered the phone. He like, "Well, look, show up in the gold tie, white shirt, and I have been going ever since." So that's kind of how that started. And I think that it was good that I did that, because like that, because like real talk, a lot of people go to school for it, spend all their money going to school. Then when they actually do it, it'd be like, I don't really think this is what I want to do. So I definitely think that like volunteering and starting out pretty young was a good start for me, because it showed me that that's really what I want to do.
Right. That's what I was going to say. When did you really know that you wanted to do this?
Well, so for me, it's like as soon as I step foot into it, because I'm like, you know what, I can do this. Because like when I would do it, I felt really like satisfied being able to help people, but also even in doing it, like it just really encouraged me like to live with purpose, like like not to like spend no, like not to waste time, because like one thing about anybody that know me, I'll tell them in a minute that like every second count, every moment counts, so don't never take life for granted. So like so like really doing that taught me early on, like whatever you want to do in life, go for it, because tomorrow not promised to anybody.
How did your parents feel when you came to them and told them that you wanted to do this?
Oh man, my dad and my mom, they were supportive, but like some of the other people were like, why don't you just be a photographer, or like you like art, why don't you do something with that? Why you want to be a mortician? Like that was I got a lot of negative feedback from some people. Like I remember in high school, this one guy, one young man I never forget, a guy named Toby. He like, what, you want to play with dead people? Like I didn't take that joke really really too well, but it's like a lot of people felt kind of negative about it. They're like, why would you want to do something like that? But when you're a person that really work in an industry, you will see it's actually a need for it. It's a need for it.
Right. I had interviewed somebody who family business was like the funeral business, and they were telling me they kept it in the family because people would come in and do freaky things to bodies, cadavers, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever heard of any stories about somebody trying to have sex with a dead body?
I've heard, yeah, I've heard of people that did stuff like that. Like, I mean, I don't know anybody personally, but I've heard them. That's why I really like when you work in that kind of industry, like especially nowadays, like if you are gonna own a funeral home, it's really, you got to be careful who you hire, and on top of that, like it's good to keep cameras back there too, because like it's, you'll be surprised. It is some crazy people in the world, but it's kind of sad that somebody would want to do something like that. But yeah, I've heard of those kind of things happening.
Right, because when she told me that and she was like, yeah, he got her pregnant. I was like, what the fuck? No, I'm just joking.
Oh, but another thing to that, like even with working in that type of industry, right? Like because sometimes you do celebrities, or you get certain people, and then you got to watch out for people trying to take pictures and stuff. So I mean, when you in a business like that, like you have to really be careful, because it's really easy to get sued. But to me, it ain't even about sues and nothing like that. It's just about respecting people's privacy.
Did you ever help with the services of a famous person?
Quite a few. The funeral home I work for, they did Bernie Mac. I mean, we met a lot of people. Dion Cole, we did his mom's service. Quite a bit people. They did Sam Cooke back in the day. So the funeral home that I work for, they did quite a few people. Yeah.
You told us about going to high school, man. I want to go back. I want to go way back, man. What type of student was you in third grade?
Oh man. I don't know. I was pretty more like chill and laid back. Probably a little sarcastic, sneaky a little bit. Yeah, man. I went to I was at Jensen on the west side of Chicago for third grade. Man, there's some memories there. Yeah.
Right. So at that time, did you live in a house with your mom and your dad?
Yeah, I lived with both parents. Yep. Mom and dad. Yep, right on the west side of Chicago on Harrison.
And they still together today?
No, they're divorced now. But they're still almost like best friends though. They talk on the phone pretty much all the time. I'll be teasing my mom all the time, like your husband called you.
What type of man was your father?
My dad, he was more like laid back, serious. Like my one thing about my dad, he was more of a hustler, he more of a hustler, laid back. But one thing about my dad though, like when he get up and he go out, and he out. You might see him when you see him. But I mean, but for the most part, he's pretty good dad. Anything we need, if he can get it for us, he got us.
You said he was a hustler. What you mean by that?
Talking about a street hustler. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever have any signs of that? See any signs growing up?
No, but like I said, my dad, he was just more like, he more of a street hustler. Like, he'd get a job wherever he could, restaurant, cleaning, helping somebody, just, he that kind of hustler, But my dad, he had been in jail a few times or whatever, but he, like I said, he's still been a good dad to me though.
Right. When you think of Chicago and a young man like you think of the gang violence and all the stuff like that. So that's why I'm glad that a person like you would come to this show and show people that everybody in Chicago ain't like that, man. How did you navigate the street life, man, to be coming to where you never joined the gang, right?
Yeah, well, first I always credit that to the Most High God, but also like my thing was that I always been the type of person that like I love people, and I know that people aren't perfect. I'm not perfect, but I realize like if you think about it, right, sometimes when you actually take time out to get to know people, sometimes a lot of people ain't as bad as people think. Like, cause like even growing up in school, right, like when my friends would have issues with people. A lot of time people like, man, I'm gonna do this to this person, whatever that person, and then I get to know that person. I'm like, come on, man, let's try to make peace, because it's like when you really think about it, like I feel like nobody really got anything out of violence, like growing up, even in the city, like seeing people like hurt each other, like I'm like it's really pointless, because why would we want to make our neighborhood unsafe? It's the place we have to live at. It's the place we might potentially raise our children in. So I don't know. I was more so like kind of like more of the peacemaker.
All right. So which one came first, the filmmaking or the wrestling?
The filmmaking.
How did you get involved with the filmmaking?
So again, just like I wanted to be a mortician as a child, I wanted to be a filmmaker. Like I always knew what I wanted to do. So what ended up happening was when I went to mortuary school, we had like these exit exams we had to pass. So I was out there, like I was going out there for like 6 months at the time trying to pass this exit exam. And I'm like, okay, if I don't pass this exam, I'm gonna have to find me something to do. Oh, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll go try like, being a plumber, because my people out in Vegas, they're in the plumbing business. So I went down to Vegas and I worked with my uncle for a week doing like plumbing work. And I'm like, man, I don't think I want to do this. Like, but I mean, it was one incident where like this lady was chewing them out, and I was just like, talking to the lady and comforting or whatever. So she chewed my uncle out, and then when she got through chewing him out, like when she got through, she like, hey, when you come back to Vegas, come by and visit me, like, cause my specialty is like talking to people. So I'm like, I don't think I can do the plumbing thing. So then I'm like, maybe I'll be like a veterinarian assistant or whatever. I went to go check out this animal school or whatever. I looked at seeing these dogs with one legs and stuff. I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. So I'm like, I remember praying, like, if I'm gonna go back to school, I'm gonna do something I like. So I'm like, why not film? So I ended up going to film school. And right when I went to film school, I ended up passing the first part of my funeral director test. So like, I feel like that was like a sign that I was on the right track. So I went to film school, started meeting different people. And like right when I got in film school, like I started producing like my own web series right away because like, again, like, me, if I get an opportunity, I'm not going to waste time with it because time is precious. So that's kind of how I started on the track of becoming a filmmaker. But I mean, it was always something that I wanted to do because, again, as a child, I remember watching the Spike Lee movie, The Crooklyn, and like seeing that movie, I'm like, man, like I really liked how the movie was really relatable, and so like seeing that like kind of really inspired me to pursue filmmaking.
Man, that's interesting. So after filmmaking, you got into wrestling?
Yep. So how wrestling came about was that I wanted to make a documentary about pro wrestling, and I wrestled in high school, by the way, too. Undefeated too, because I only had one match. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to make a documentary on pro wrestling, so I reached out to Steve Boz, and if you don't know what Steve Boz is, he's a well-known pro wrestler in Chicago. He was in like WWE back in the day for a little while, and he trained at a few different places and wrestled all over the world at a couple of promotions. So I reached out to him, and I'm like, I'm a filmmaker. I would like to make a documentary. So he invited me out to meet like the wrestlers, and I don't know if you watch like AEW, but like I ended up meeting like Sky Blue, young guy Axel Rico, my best friend Levi, and my boy John. That's like when I met all them. So when I was like there talking to him about doing my documentary, Steve Boz like, well, when you gonna start training? So I'm like, well, I'll start next week. So that's kind of how I started doing that. So I ended up training for 2 years. And man, I had a blast training because like, once I started training, I'm like, man, like it's crazy how like you can have a dream and then you actually pursue it, and like you realize like a lot of this stuff is not as hard as people think it is. So me and my boy Jalen, we ended up sticking around CSW for like 2 years, and like within that 2 years, like we was able to, meet a lot of people. Like we met Carlito, WWE. We was able to meet Scotty Too Hotty. We got a chance to work a show with Hornswoggle, and it was like, it's amazing, man. We met so many people.
Did you become a wrestler at that point?
Well, so me, because I'm a smaller guy, and then too, like I said, I got other things that I'm doing. I was training more. Even though I did train to wrestle, I was training to actually be a manager. But if you're gonna be a manager, they train bumps too. So like I had the option to either wrestle or be a manager, and I actually chose to manage. So God willing, pretty soon you'll probably be seeing me doing that real soon.
What was the difference between you in 3rd grade and 8th grade?
I would say more so the difference. Like when I got to 8th grade, I was more kind of like ready for something new. Like looking forward to going to high school, and even then it's like, I was just more excited about just being able to venture out and just go somewhere different, because I feel like in 3rd grade, I was probably a lot more shy. By the time I got to 8th grade, I was a lot more outspoken.
How was you with the ladies?
Oh man. More so in high school, I ended up having a whole lot of like lady friends back then. Kind of talked to a few girls on and off or whatever, but more of a smooth talker.
Right. They didn't get turned off by the fact that you wanted to be a mortician?
Yeah, one girl did. Me, I'll never forget when I told her that, she was like, "Oh no, you gotta find another career."
You gonna make her pay for that, huh? You gonna make her pay for that in the future, right?
Yeah, but some of the other young ladies that I got a chance to be off and on with, like they didn't mind, they didn't care, they figured as long as you're doing something, that's all that mattered, because I mean some people got spooked out by it, but like The ladies that most of the ones I dealt with, they weren't bothered by it.
So what you got coming up with the filmmaking?
So right now I'm actually doing a documentary on my experience training for pro wrestling. So I should be finished with that one by the summer. But I'm excited about that. I'm really excited about it because I mean, being a black person in that industry, like real talk, we don't always get, we don't always really get the same privileges. And I can say that firsthand because I've seen it. And I mean, and even back to like your question when you asked, like I noticed that a lot of the black wrestlers that I saw, like they really don't push them like that.
So where can the people find your work?
Oh, so you can find me on Vimeo, Wave Filmmaker 777 on Vimeo, and feel free to check me out.
And if they need the services of the mortuary.
Okay, well, I got a few plugs. Leak and Sons Funeral Home, also Higgins, good friend of mine. Any one of those places are pretty good places.
All right, man. Y'all heard that, man. Make sure y'all check this guy out. Whether you need his services or you don't.
Hopefully, no time soon.
Right. Hopefully not
I
me.
tell people keep on living, keep living.
Right. Hopefully not me. But at the same time, though, man, I just find that kind of like that's a career choice that only a certain type of person can make. And you're making that decision as a young man in high school. Some people they get brought in through the family. Most people, right? And you came in from the outside, so that's kind of how do you feel about that? Most people come through the family.
Yeah, that's a good point. But actually, for me, yeah, it is more of a family business. But I think the thing is that a lot of times what happens in families though. It's like the mom and dad, they'll do it, but then the children don't want to do it, Or sometimes the children will see the money side of it, and then they don't really, sometimes they don't really want to do it, but it's like, it's convenient for them. So I just feel like, if you're gonna do that, do it because you love it. Do it because you really want to help people. And I feel like also in the industry, like I think it's important for like people to really serve our community and like not try to get over on people, but really help them.
All right, man. Y'all heard it, man, right here, man, from this brother, Wade Simmons, the movie man. Make sure y'all check him out on all streaming platforms. It's your homeboy Love from the Go, man. We'll be back, man. With that being said, I just want to say peace.